as I was saying, show the dots on the plots. Whenever you're visualizing averages, it can be very helpful to represent the individual points. Kind of gives the reader an understanding of the distribution of the data, especially if we're talking about human research, human subject research. When you're creating your figures, I like to get inspiration from diverse sources. So don't limit yourself to other figures that other researchers have published. Sometimes you can get great ideas from other books that you're reading. So this is the one figure on the left is from Human Information Processing by Norman and Lindsay. I think that these are great figures, really, evocative, maybe not as scientifically technical, but there are some elements that are really exciting that could be transferred into a figure in the future. Something like, this Popular Mechanics cover from 77. I thought the colors here were just terrific. I don't really like that yellow in the top right or the bottom right, but something like the green of the woods and the yellow of the helicopter thing, camper, whatever that is, can be a really great source of inspiration for a color palette. Go outside of what is normally done. You can create a very unique image, I think, that can be very exciting. Now we're getting into the demo side of the talk. So I'll be talking about hybrid figures. So what is a hybrid figure? Just like buckbeak, right? It's maybe, is it a horse? Is it a bird? Is it an illustration? Is it a plot? It's actually something in the middle. So here are some examples of hybrid figures that I've pulled from recent research. As you can see, there are elements that are both either an illustration. So maybe the plot on the top right, this skeleton thing that I drew, or this individual walking on a treadmill from a paper by Alyssa Spomer. These can be done in Inkscape, or it might consist of a photograph where you've cropped out the background, as in this paper from Paolo Kuzia or from Salvato in 2021. I had to throw in a little bit of haptics for my MPI folks that are joining today. But the cool thing about a hybrid figure is that it allows you to get the best of both worlds between your methods and your results, right? You have either your concept or your experimental setup, and you also have some results and data. This can be very effective as a first figure. Sometimes a paper will ask you if you want to include like they have different names for it in different papers, but like an eye-catching figure or like a header figure. And this will be something that they distribute in their social media channels. They might post about it on Twitter. It can be the visual equivalent of like the last paragraph of your introduction section, right? So in this paper, we did blah, blah, blah. You want to make sure that if it's the first thing that the reader sees, that it's really crowd pleasing. So it has that, all of those consistent elements, all those clarity elements that we talked about earlier. So that concludes the presentation side of this talk. Now we're going to move to Inkscape. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and go to Inkscape. What you're going to want to do is just open up an empty Inkscape. Let's see. Okay. So can everyone see my screen? I hope you can. Nothing has changed. Okay. I'm going to go through the very, very quick parts of Inkscape, or the very basic parts of Inkscape a little bit quickly, and then get into the deeper levels. This is going to be maybe a little bit more advanced, but if you need me to slow down at any point or re-clarify, I'm happy to do so. Okay. So this is our page. This is our sheet that we're working with. You can change the dimensions of the sheet if you want. You can scroll up or down with your mouse key. If you hold down Control, you can zoom in, Control, and then scroll with your mouse. On the left-hand side, you have your different tools that you use. So right now we have our cursor selected. On the top, these are your just regular functions that you would use. On the right, your right-hand side might look a little bit different. These are the things that I've selected that would be useful for me. So exporting images and your fill and stroke. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Cool. If you want to change these views, I think it should be in view somewhere. over here somewhere, but this should be, you will always have fill and stroke pulled out. Maybe the first thing that we can start with is creating a rectangle. So you can go to this left-hand side, you can click create rectangles and squares, and you can drag and drop a rectangle. This one that I've created looks a little bit ugly. So what's going on here? We've got some colors. You can see there's a color for the shading and a color for the outline. In order to change some aspects of this figure, I like to click on my cursor. You can see that these arrows on the outside of the figure have changed. So now I can reshape it by dragging and dropping. Reshape it this way. If I click on the center of this figure again with my cursor, you can see that these figures or these arrows change into rotation arrows. So I can then rotate my object. I can also scale it. So I can click on it again, change these arrows back into straight arrows, and then hold down Control, and this will scale my image by maintaining the dimensions of the image, right? So that can be very helpful if you're trying to scale something without changing the shape of it, without warping it too much. Because you can see if I just drag and drop, then I can warp my rectangle and it looks like more of a parallelogram now. And also change the colors of this. So yours will hopefully not be teal with a gross yellow outline. And change the colors either by going to my color strip down at the bottom here. So maybe I want to pick like a gray. You can see that changed the color of the inside shading. Let's do a lighter gray. And if you hold down Shift, you can change the stroke color. You can also change these colors on the right-hand side over here. So there's fill and there's stroke. Fill is the part in the middle, stroke is that outline. Fill we can change here. Again, we have those different color models. So RGB, CMYK, etc. You can also change the stroke paint. So again, we really want some nice pink. You can also change the stroke style. So I have dashes. If you wanted it to be solid, you can make it solid. You can also change the width of it. So maybe I want to make it really large or even larger. Great. So that is a rectangle. It is a very beautiful rectangle. We can pull that off to the side over here. What if we wanted to create a shape that is not a rectangle and not a circle and not a star? You might want to create a vector. So there is this tool over here for drawing Bezier curves. These are going to be very smooth lines that you can use to create very nice illustrations. So these are the ones that you'd be seeing in those papers and those hybrid figures that we talked about before. Is everyone with me so far? Any questions here? Cool. Okay, once we get to this step, right, we can select our Bezier curves. We click and release to create a point. And you can see I'm not holding down the mouse at all. I just have this kind of loose end. Maybe I want to create another point here and here and here and here. And ultimately I want to bring them back to the same place. Okay, now we have a straight line rectangle. In order to change the curvature of each one of these lines, we would then go to this cursor where it says edit paths by nodes. So here we can then drag and drop each one of the lines that we've created in order to make a curvy shape. You can also click again on that line, and this will create these little handle toggles, right? So you can pull these and you can make your shape curve a little bit more custom to whatever you need it to look like. Say that I've decided that I need actually another point of inflection here at some point. So I can double click at this point on the line, and now I've created another point, and I can use that to drag around my figure. Cool. Say I change my mind. I don't want it anymore. And just click on it and click delete. Cool. This is a really fun tool. This is pretty much the #1 thing that I use Inkscape for the most. I would recommend getting very familiar with how this works. It can be very helpful. And again, we can use the same ideas for coloring and shading that we used on our rectangle. So we want to first switch our cursor to the regular cursor. And now we see those exact same arrows in the corner to allow us to resize our shape that we saw before. Okay, and again, maybe we want to create a better color for this. Let's go over here. This is a nice color. So I'm clicking on this teal and then I'm holding down Shift and clicking to change the outline. Okay, then we can drag and drop that over there. Okay, any questions so far? Cool. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears a little bit. And we're going to talk about how to export or import figures from Matlab. So in that GitHub link that I shared with you, should be here, there is a Matlab script with some sample data. It's a very, very simple script. You can write it yourself. All we really need is a figure with some kind of data on it. So you can either copy and paste this into your Matlab file, or if you're lazy like I am, I've also saved a .fig and a .svg. So that's going to be the output. So here we have our script. It's just creating some fake sine waves and plotting them. And here's what that figure looks like. It's not perfect. I don't love it. So instead of spending a lot of time editing it in Matlab, what I'm going to do instead is export this figure into Inkscape and edit it there. The one thing that I will mention, it is very annoying to edit text in Inkscape. So I like to make sure that my axes, so the size of these, of the numbers on my axes or my labels are consistent. It's not impossible to edit it in Inkscape, but it's a little bit annoying. So I like to make sure that my font size is nice and where I want it. We're going to save our figure. You can save it as a .fig Matlab figure, or you can save it as an SVG, which is a scalable vector graphics file. We'll save it to our folder. Okay. And so we can close out of Matlab. That's going to be the exact same sample fig that I have here on GitHub if you would just like to download that one instead. Back to Inkscape. We will import an image, right? So we go File, Import. We navigate to where our figure was. And as you can see, it's already in an SVG format, so it can import very easily into Inkscape. What's up, Rachel?
Can you import a Matlab figure directly into Inkscape, or does it need to be an SVG?
Let's find out. I know you can import PNG. I don't think you can import .fig.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. But it's also much, much easier to work with SVGs, and I'll show you why. So we also have some chat. Awesome. Thank you, Naomi. Okay. So once we get to the import, it's going to ask us whether we want to import the image as an editable object or a non-editable object. And we want to be able to edit it. So we're not going to change the setting. You can also change your rendering mode. So whether you want it to go fast or smooth. Honestly, even the optimized quality setting is not going to be very slow at all. And you can also set your DPI, which is your something pixels per inch. Remember what D stands for. Dots per inch. That's what DPI is. So this is a measure of your resolution. 96 is fine. And we import it. So here is our beautiful MATLAB figure that we have now imported into Inkscape. So we can zoom in, again, holding down Control and using the scroll in order to zoom in. So this is all one solid object. That's kind of annoying. We can't edit it. What we need to do is ungroup all of the different layers that are stacked together. So we're going to click on our object, right click, and go to ungroup. And you're going to want to do this a couple times because there are a lot of layers. So I've done it twice, and now you can already see that Inkscape is giving me little outline boxes around all the different elements that have now become ungrouped. So if I wanted to, I could go to time and I could start moving this around. See, now it's untethered. I can also start moving around my legend. So I'm clicking on one, holding down shift, clicking down the other. And say I want to have my legend over here. This seems like a better place for it. Ooh, this is fun. Rachel can see what's going on here. So as you can see, as I bring my element that I'm moving around closer to something else, it starts snapping it into place. This is convenient when you're trying to align things, but it's really, really annoying 99% of the time. So I like to turn this setting off. So that setting is right here. It should be in the far right, top right. This is enable snapping. I like to disable it. And that way I can just move my elements around without Inkscape trying to be smart on me and tell me where it thinks I want them. I want it right here. Okay. So now we've ungrouped. We have different elements that we can move around. Something that I like to do is remove these little knobs, little nubs. I'm sure there's a technical name for it. I don't know what that is. Notches, maybe. So what you want to do is, again, ungroup and just delete them. Maybe you want to make them bigger. I don't know. Maybe you want to edit them. Again, figures are subjective. So I like to remove those. You can also change these line qualities. So say I don't like this color at all. I can change the color of it by going to stroke and maybe making it lighter. Okay, as you can see, I'm changing both colors, which is not what I wanted. So I forgot to ungroup one more time. You can Control Z, you can right click, ungroup, and now your two images, your two time series are separate. So we can change these colors. We can change the width of that stroke, right? We can make it a little bit thicker. We can make it into a dashed line. We can make it into a really, really thick dashed line if we wanted to. There's a lot of fun settings that you can play around with here. I don't like how that looks. I'm gonna make it a little smaller. Don't forget that this is not going to auto update. So if you have a legend that you would like to maintain, you would also need to change this and this, right, to make it consistent. Cool. So these are just some simple things that I like to do with Matlab figures. If you have your color palette, it is much easier to change things in Inkscape, in my opinion. You get a lot more flexibility. You can also change your font size here. The thing about this is that it's not text. So it's actually just like an image of the words. It's not an editable text. If you wanted to change this to be a text box, there's a text setting here. So here's time, seconds. Maybe this is how I want it to look instead, right? These are two different things. Okay, when it comes to making hybrid figures, what I do is a combination of editing the Matlab exported SVG and using my node drawing tool. So if you remember in our presentation, there were a couple figures that looked like kind of the background had been cropped out of them, right? So how would you do something like that in Inkscape? The first thing that you would want to do is import an image, a reference image that you would like to use. So either this is going to be a royalty-free image. This might be something that you took on your own. It might be something in between, I don't know. So again, we're going to import. And I have a stock image of a man on a treadmill. This is also in the GitHub. It should be saved under Inkscape. And you're going to import it the same way. This is, I believe, a JPEG file, yes. But you can import it the exact same way. Again, it gives you some suggestions on how to import your file. So you can specify your resolution, you can specify your rendering mode. Because we're using this as a reference, it doesn't really matter what the resolution is quite so much. So we now have our man on a treadmill. This is a stock photo. This is not a photo I took on my own. Everyone with me so far? I'll give you a couple seconds to catch up. Cool. Any questions? Terrific. Okay. So there's two things that I would like to teach you to do with this figure. So we can make two copies of it. We have this man, we can Control C, Control V, and now we have two of them. Very cool. I'm actually going to move this plot out of the way. I'm going to group it, make it into one big thing again. Okay. So the first thing is I will show you how to crop parts of an image. So say that I actually don't care about his upper body whatsoever. I just want to have the bottom half of him in my figure. So you can either create a rectangle, like a little bounding box around what you want to capture. Say I want to be able to see what's actually happening below, right? I can just have a transparent box and I can make my outline a little bit more obvious. Okay. And so I can change this rectangle. I can scale it to where I want it. Okay. It doesn't have to match up exactly on the sides, and you'll see why in just a second. But maybe I'm trying to figure out exactly where I want to slice them vertically. Sounded a little scary, sorry. Okay, we have our rectangle, we've drawn it. What we're going to want to do is select both the rectangle and the person. You want to have two things selected, right? We have our rectangle selected, we go to the cursor, we hold down Shift, and we click on the image below. So now we have both the image and the rectangle selected. We will go to Object, Clip, and Set. And so when I click this, now it has cropped my man in half. There he is. So say I've changed my mind and I actually don't want to have a rectangle crop. I want to have a crop that goes like this around his legs and then goes horizontal on the sides. So how would I do something like that? I can Control Z. And instead of drawing a rectangle, I can draw a Bezier curve, right? The same way that I showed you with this cool object here. So we go back to our drawing tool. You can zoom in a little bit. You can get really, really, really picky with how closely you draw around your man. Because the background is already white, we can cheat a little bit and we can be a little messy with it. But we can draw a shape around his body, around our treadmill, and then connect the pieces. So I'm going to make that outline red so that I can see a little bit more clearly what's going on. Actually, I'm going to make it blue because his shorts are orange. Okay. Say I want to make sure that this line is a little bit less straight, more curvy. Again, you can drag and drop that curve around. Maybe I'm happy with that, right? Perfection is the antithesis of completion, or however they say it. Okay, so now we have this shape. We have selected it. We can hold down the Shift button, click on the image behind, and then again go to Object, Clip, Set. And now we have this scary disembodied lower body happening here. So a hybrid image might look something like this, where you have someone walking on a treadmill. You have this figure here, right? Maybe we have an element that talks about, say there's an arrow that we would like to draw from this line over here to his legs, and showing that it's a bad day for this man. His magic is just too low. You can get very creative with how you're arranging these elements together. So the second thing that I like to do with images like this is to use them as an illustration reference. So say I don't want my image to have any skin or any kind of human realism. Say I want to have a fully grayed out person, like a mannequin, but he's already in such a convenient position. I don't really want to have to draw a mannequin from scratch. I'm also just not that good at drawing. So we're going to go back to our Bezier curve. And now we're going to eventually get really, really good at outlining these shapes exactly, right? So we're going to want to start with this, with his lower body, and make a lot of small points at the different places around the outline of his body that you would like to trace. So I'm doing this a little bit sloppily. If I was doing this for real, I would spend more time on it. But this is just for the purposes of a demo. You don't have to go too crazy with it, because again, we're going to be changing the curviness of these lines. I'm sure there's a more technical word for curviness. And we've completed our shape, right? So again, I'm going to make this blue, make that outline blue. I'm going to make it really wide so I can see what's going on. And then we're going to go to our Bezier edit tool. And we're going to change how much these different parts of his body curve. I've kind of overdone it on the knee. So what I can do is actually just click on a node and delete it. And it defaults to this kind of nice curvy shape. So we'll say that's good enough for a leg. Maybe change some stuff around over here, maybe make his calf a little curvier, give him a better knee on the back leg. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect right now. You can spend more time perfecting it later. This looks kind of strange, but that's okay. Great. So now we have this outline. What we can do is shade it in with gray. And now we have this kind of outline, skeleton looking thing that we can use in our images. So maybe instead of this cropped image, we use this instead. And maybe we create a little fake treadmill for him with a rectangle underneath. Yes, Naomi.
I have a couple of questions about this part of the process.
Yes.
So first, does this have some kind of function where if you're drawing like a Bezier curve, that it can snap to like existing curve, you know, it's like to better trace the leg, or maybe something that can like convert your image to a vector graphic, like approximates?
Yes. Okay. That is, I've never thought about that before. So I know that it's not going to be able to snap to a PNG, but if this was an SVG, then you would be able to enable snapping and then snap to it that way. I'm just not certain how that would work, because this is like, so usually an SVG is like just the tracing, like the outline shapes. There might be a faster way to do it. I would be very curious. If you figure it out, let me know.
Yeah, cool.
Do you have another question?
Oh, I guess actually just for your plot, I was wondering if you have like a font that you like in Matlab that you think is nice generally.
I am a big Arial fan.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's the default actually in Matlab.
Yeah.
Helvetica if I'm feeling saucy.
Yeah, I also like Helvetica.
But other than that, no.
Cool, thanks.
Of course. We are at 4 o'clock, so if anyone needs to leave at 4, feel free. If anyone wants to stick around, I know our CMU lab meetings typically go for another 30 minutes, but that is all that I wanted to show you in Inkscape today. Any questions, any thoughts?
Okay, what kind of challenges have you had?
Okay, something that I always forget how to do is a gradient. So say I wanted to, let's see if I can remember how to do this in real time. So say I wanted to create a gradient where the top half of this guy is all white and the bottom half is transparent. So I'm going to draw a rectangle over him. And this is the gradient tool. And I'm going to click and drag. Yes. Okay. And it's black, so I want to make it white. Okay, I think I need to start with a white rectangle. Okay, and then create my gradient. Yes, okay. And you can change how quickly your gradient gradients. Say I just want his head to be anonymous. There's also a way to gradient between two different colors. But I think like a transparency gradient can be a very effective tool for making things that look like they're fading into the distance, or like transitioning between two different visual elements. So that is a challenge. Another thing that can be annoying is if you have too many clips in one figure, your Inkscape will crash. So I was creating a figure where I had exported an SVG from Python, and it was a violin plot, which I couldn't figure out how to make in Matlab. And the only way I could figure out how to do it was in Python, and it exported, and I had like, I want to say like 300 layers. And I was clipping some of them, and Inkscape just kept crashing. So there is definitely a limit to what you can ask the software to accomplish.
Mine started crash, or mine crashes too. I would say with fewer than 300, but I can't think off the top of my head. There's some sort of visual tell. I can see like when it's no more progress is going to be made. So I found saving frequently is a good solution.
Yes, saving frequently is a great solution to most problems. Another thing is there is a way to visualize your layers. X-ray mode. Is that right? It didn't work. Oh, it did work. Yes, so I don't know if you can see what's happening, but I have like my cursor is doing X-ray stuff. So it shows me that I have a rectangle around my image. It shows me that I have, this is something that I've drawn, right? There's only one layer here. Here you can see the outlines of the clip that I created and the outlines of the box. But that can be helpful when you don't even know how many layers you have. That can be a good way to look at it.
But in terms of, okay, I'm thinking like if I make a MATLAB plot and then I want to edit it in Inkscape, and then I actually change the plot though, it won't update, right? So I'll have to like redo the edits that I've made.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Yeah. So this is, I try to like get my data finalized. And then once I know what my figures are going to look like, what I'm actually visualizing, what the content of it is, then I go into the style as a second pass.
Okay.
Obviously it's not perfect, and sometimes there are changes that you want to make. Your reviewer asks you to visualize another thing, and so you visualize another plot. You will have to redo it, but I think the time that you gain working with Inkscape overcomes the annoyance of working with Matlab in general.
Yeah. Do you have all your figures for one paper in one Inkscape file, or you split it up?
So I split them up when I'm actually working on them, but I combine them when I'm about to publish into one big file, so that I know that the font size is going to be consistent across all of them, if that makes sense. So I have like my figure, and again, I'm saving them as SVGs, and SVGs are incompressible, or sorry, they're not compressed. So you can scale them. You can scale these bad boys to as small as you want, and then when you zoom in, they're still going to be they're not going to be pixelated, right? You can also make them as big as you want, and the resolution isn't going to change. So I have all of my figures saved as SVGs, and I put them all in one big Inkscape file, and then scale them up and down to make sure that the font sizes are identical across all of them, and then break them off into separate individual figures before submission.
Okay. The problem that I have is like when I put it into ShareLaTeX, and then I kind of like need to know what size figure I want it to be already before I put it in, and then make sure it stays at like 100%. Otherwise, if I resize it, then it's like font size is different. But
yes, yeah, which is why I again reiterate the importance of putting your figures into the document and seeing what that font size looks like. When you're exporting, actually, this is one thing that I forgot to cover. But when you're exporting, you can decide what your resolution is going to be here. And you can also determine the size of the figure that you want. So say that I have a requirement where my figure has to be, no greater than 5 inches across. I can set that here and then export it. I don't know what this is. Yeah, I just have this item selected. And so it'll tell me exactly what that resolution is going to be, what the pixel size is going to be. And I can change it accordingly when I export so that it fits my requirements for the paper.
Thanks for the
Anything else I can
workshop.
show off? What'd you say?
Thanks for the workshop.
Of course, I'm happy to help. Hopefully it was helpful. I know we moved quickly through some things, but I think the basic tools are very simple. The thing that makes the figure go from like looking basic to looking expert is just putting in lots of hours in practice. So hopefully you enjoy. Cool. Okay. I will stop sharing. Feel free to head out. I'll stick around in case anyone has any other questions.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome. It's good to see
Bye.
everyone. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks, Chad.